going on, guys? This is Wade with Trade ATS. I want to welcome you to this week's video where we try to figure out which pairs are going to be the best to trade this next week. It is Sunday, February 24th, 2019. And I want to start this week talking a little bit about what ended up unfolding last week on dollar CAD. I know when we started last week, we were talking about how dollar CAD was it was stuck in a range basically between this expansion and this expansion right here on the daily. And we were trying to see, you know, we were definitely short. So we were, if you were trading, you were definitely going off that short direction on the daily. But what ended up happening on Wednesday, which was the 20th, right here on this daily candle, we ended up getting a new expansion line right here. And then the minute we got that new line, we were under expansion. And we had some defined direction on that. So I want to talk to you about the trading opportunities that did happen in that situation. We had this run right here on the 4-hour that came down. This was a decent setup right here. We were still kind of stuck in that range, but if you were going to trade, you were definitely only short. And then we had this run down, and this was actually pretty clean the way that it worked out. We were under expansion on the 4-hour right here. You can see we came up, we held that line perfectly and rotated off of that, which was an awesome sign. And seeing that perfect rotation, I know that like some of my guys have been trading with me a lot of years. That's a confidence inspiring thing where they see that. So even though we were stuck in that tight range, I know a lot of my guys ended up trading this. I got a little bit out of this myself, and it worked out greatly. So we had that, and then we also had a rotation right here that I want to talk to you about too. So let's go back. I want to dissect this leg right here and show you guys where those opportunities were. So we're going to go back on the 15, which is right here. And this was that manipulation that came up. We had expansion here, price manipulated up and blew out these traders right here. You can see we came up, took out this liquidity line. If you look back, where's the origination of that liquidity line was right here. So coming down this run, we had traders that sold into this, that were still holding those profitable positions. It came up, blew them out right there, and then price rotated off of that. So that was the start of the down move, and you can see that was timed with holding under expansion, which is that's that tipping point. If we're above expansion, we're buying. If we're below, we're selling. As far as your directional bias, your entry, we're doing the opposite. But directional bias, you're working that as a momentum type indicator. So we're short on the daily. We see that rotate. You're gonna probably miss this one right here. You're gonna miss this leg because this is basically the leg that turned the 4-hour. So yeah, let's just say that you didn't get any of that. Right here was your first trade entry opportunity. We came down, we popped an expansion right here on this candle on the 15, and at that point, the minute you got that white line, you are above expansion in a down market, in a confirmed down market. We're short on the 4-hour under expansion, and we're short on the daily at that point under expansion. So there, you're going to sell that right there in expectation that you're going to get down through the line. If you see it came down, rejected off expansion, but it didn't go back up past where that active high was right here. So held under there, and then we broke, came down, got a new expansion, ricocheted off of that, and went into a nice down run. This was such an early entry into this new 4-hour rotation. These are the ones that you really want to hang it out on. These are where you're going to get the bigger paydays. Because remember, like every trend that you get in, eventually it's going to turn. You know, it's going to go back. In this case, it went back long down in this area. But the first entry opportunities where you're above expansion and you're getting that first rotation on the 4-hour into the daily or whatever you're using for your multiple time frame to form your directional bias. When you get that first rotation, you get that first entry point, those are the golden opportunities, and this one was really nice. Down the first leg was the 32 pip opportunity. In this case, it puts you up pretty good to where you kind of bought a ticket into this run, so you could have stayed into this thing as long as you could have held in there. So total opportunity down to the turn was about 60, say around 65 pips. So it was a decent opportunity. We did have other entries that were right here. We can see we had an expansion. We came below. You got to be careful when you break out below, but we whipped back up, took out that liquidity. And remember, if as long as that 4 hour doesn't rotate on you, anytime you hit the opposite liquidity line, that's another entry to get back in. So from the liquidity line here down to, we broke another one that was an 18 pip opportunity. Then we got back above expansion, which still puts you again in entry criteria. That whip down was another 22 pips. And then we got another one right here, which actually turned into a nice big run of another 40 pips or so. So anyway, a lot of good opportunities, but notice I'm not talking about buying the market at all. The directional bias was defined short on the 4 hour. That's a significant time frame, and that was in line with the daily. So you had a lot of probability. Anytime you get above expansion against that, you're going to get paid on those right up until the turn, which was right here. So we came out of the box, we blew out of expansion. This was actually at news that we had the FOMC meeting released on that one. Came out of the box, whipped down, but notice it did not take out that liquidity line. That shows you that smart money, they're protecting that liquidity down there, which is an indicator that this could be a turn. So even if you sold this one, you came back below, you probably at the worst case would have got out break even on this one. I didn't personally get to trade this one on this opportunity, but that would have been the instruction for that. If it did come back up, you would have sold it up above here. You would have saw a nice little profit actually on that. The dip down was, well, it was about 14 pips and not that great. Never mind. Wasn't that great, but you shouldn't have taken a big hit on this. But this literally, because this didn't pay and you didn't get below the original expansion box, you didn't get, it didn't turn into a run. That's your indicator that you're kind of putting the pieces of the market together. And because it didn't pay, it turns into actually a big turn. And that's really the only time when you're doing this right and you have that alignment. You got the 4 hour in the direction. If you're using this type of setup and you're entering on the 15, if you have the 4 hour supporting your direction and you're under expansion like that, you're only looking to short, then every time you get above and you take out those liquidity lines, you should get paid. That's you're doing things right. So there's a payday, there's a payday, there's a payday. Here's potentially a payday, but this one, if you did get out at break even, it was the turn. And in that case, you want to take the loss. You're going to wait. And the minute that we rotated on the 4 hour, you see that green candle right there, you're done. You're not going to trade against that because now you're trading against expansion. So anyway, we had a lot of good opportunity coming down that run. And then the real opportunity was on Friday. We came down, we had a rotation right here. And this one, you were trading against expansion. This is where you got to kind of put these things together because you do have the daily, you are under expansion. So this was a little bit more long-term of a setup because you weren't under expansion yet on the 4 hour. So really what you're trying to do is you're trying to navigate the turn on the 4 hour coming back down through, similar to what we're doing over here, right? Because we have in this situation, we have the 4 hour under expansion, and then we're just taking it at the top of the 15 and back down through, right? So you're doing basically the same thing, but you're using the 4 hour more for entry. So you're basically navigating through this turn. So your expectation is that the 4 hours is going to come back down through expansion right here, which was right here at that point, which it did, and then put you into a run on the 4 hour. But because it's a 4 hour turn, it could take a lot longer. So it's not the quick paydays that we were looking for in this run using the 15. But there was an entry if you were using the 15 to help you navigate this turn. Here it was right here. The 4 hour turn, it turned right here, confirmed short on the 8 o'clock candle right here, 800 candle. And then you can see right here we broke short, had that manipulation. We whipped up, blew out those two liquidity lines, and that was your first opportunity to short the beginning of the run on that 4 hour. So right there, and then boom, that thing just fell apart. We blew through this liquidity right here, which was kind of what you were working down. You had a gap when you got in right here that worked down to this liquidity line here, which was 60 pips. But you can see the way it treated this liquidity right here. Smart money, the market makers, they can either accumulate that. And if they do, chances are it's going to turn the market. But they didn't. They used that liquidity to actually further the market. They didn't accumulate it. They let it just push into more profits. So the total on that, it didn't turn until you could see we barely tagged this one. That was 90, roughly a 90 to 100 pip trade, depending on how you navigated the entry right here. You're probably not going to get all of that, but at the end of the day, you had an awesome entry into a gigantic rotation on the 4 hour in trend with the daily. So it was a little bit longer term of a trade, but man, it was picture perfect. If you can work out trading this type of opportunity and you just focused on these ones that are early into the rotation on the 4 hour, and you just let it hang on these, those are your money trades right there. So anyway, it ended up being a pretty good week last week. Nice trending days. What I think for the dollar CAD this week, while we're talking about it, I think there's definitely a good chance we could get down to this liquidity line here on the daily, which is like 65 pips away or so. But it does look like we may be taking a breath. We'll see. We actually, right now, believe it or not, right at this moment, we are in criteria to short. So this very well right now may be an entry to short. But here's the thing. We did blow down through this liquidity, and sometimes we could end up retracing back up to the liquidity line, and the market will take a little breath, and then it'll continue back down to this one, and then we have our gaps right there we can project. Not that I wouldn't take this, but really this is just a continuation of what started up here. So you got to ask yourself how many more are going to pay before you end up getting a turn and we take a breath on the 4 hour. So not that I wouldn't trade it, but let's just say I wouldn't risk everything on this type of opportunity because you're already so far into the maturity of that trend. So if you are in this type of trade, what I would look for is if you come down, and it'll put you into the money right now, most likely. But if we hold that expansion right here, let's say it pushes down and then it ricochets off, I'd dump that because that's a good sign that we're going into a green candle on the 4 hour, and you don't want to go on that bus ride. You want to let it take a big breath and then catch it back up here somewhere and take it down. So anyway, that's what I think of the dollar CAD. Had good opportunities last week. I think there'll probably still be some good opportunities. I would definitely only be short with that daily under expansion like that. This thing looks like it's trending hard short. So I would definitely be biased to the short side. I would be careful if the daily rotates long. Maybe it may go long for a day or two, but I think the money's going to be on the short side, especially too, because our weekly is short. We're in a box, but right now it definitely feels like we could get a push down to the bottom, which is again another 70 pips, and we can break out of that box going short. So that could be a breakout trade on the weekly, but we'll just have to see how it goes, and we'll react accordingly. So anyway, that's what I think about the dollar CAD. Okay, so the next pair I want to talk to you about, or the last pair, is actually the euro dollar, which is my least favorite pair to trade, but believe it or not, there's actually something to talk about. Daily, you can see we pushed down on the daily. We had a new expansion line, and we're coming back up. If we hold under this expansion, right now I wouldn't be trading long because we are under that expansion on the daily. But if we do rotate, I think we're going to rotate depending on where we end up rotating from, but there's definitely an opportunity for a couple hundred pips coming down to this next liquidity line here. And the reason why I think this is significant, that I would be taking a look at this, is number one, we've been in a massively just choppy market for a long time, so it's definitely due to open up. But right now, if we do rotate short, I want you to see what's going on the monthly. So we take a look at the monthly. We are under expansion on the monthly, and we are literally, all that choppiness has just been this breath that we've taken on the monthly. But we're literally 5 days out from confirming short on the monthly in what could be another monthly series, and we can definitely get some nice pops down. We're about 500 pips off of this expansion here on the monthly, and then if it goes below that, we're 1,000 pips to the next liquidity line down there. So if we do rotate on the daily in line with the monthly on that, if we do rotate short out of this, hopefully you see what I mean. If we fall back in alignment with the monthly, this could definitely be some significant down movement days. So that's just one thing I'd keep an eye on. Like I said, I'm not real fond of euro dollar myself, but I do know a lot of my guys like euro dollar and they take a look at it. But so I thought it's definitely at this point, out of all the times that this thing goes sideways, if you are going to look at it right now, is definitely a time that I'd be keeping an eye for that short rotation, as long as we hold under this expansion. If this daily continues to climb and we get above this expansion, I would scratch that entire idea and I'd ignore this thing. If we do rotate short, I think it could get really, really interesting. So that's just my recommendation on that. Do what you want, but something could definitely be there. Also, too, if we do rotate short, here's a 4-hour chart. Real choppy coming through the end of last week. But if we do start to get some movement down below this expansion line here on the 4-hour, well, that's probably where it's going to start to take off. And then I would look to see if the trend doesn't start forming on the downside coming through there. And then you got your gaps right here. You got a 47 pip gap there and a 40 pip gap there. Those would be your initial profit targets for any kind of rotation that would happen on the short side. So other than that, that's about all I have for you this week. If you guys have any suggestions or you would like to see a video on a specific currency or a specific setup or whatever, we're always open for opinions. You know, we're more than happy to put things together. You know, and we want to make relevant content for you. We want to make videos that will actually help you in your specific situation. So if you're a subscriber and you want to see a specific video on a specific currency pair, please let us know. We'd be more than happy to include that in our weekly videos. So anyway, hope this helps. And if you guys have any general questions or anything, always feel free to contact us at support. Until the next video, everyone have a great trading week, and we'll talk to you soon.